Picture this. It is the middle of the night, tens of thousands of years ago. You are small, you are slow, you have no claws, you have no fangs, you have no armor, and no venom. Your skin is soft. Your legs cannot outrun almost anything that wants to eat you. And out there in the dark, something is watching you with eyes that see far better than yours. This was the everyday reality for our ancestors. For most of human history, we were not the top of the food chain. We were somewhere in the middle, and plenty of animals looked at a human being and saw a warm, easy meal. There were cave lions far bigger than any lion alive today. There were cave bears that stood taller than a grown man. There were hyenas the size of a small bear. There were saber-tooth cats with fangs as long as your hand, giant eagles that could snatch a small child from the ground, and packs of wolves that hunted with terrifying patience. Some of these hunters may even have specialized in eating our kind. There was a leopard-like cat that prowled the ancient plains of Africa, and at some sites, its remains sit right beside the broken bones of early humans, as if our ancestors had been part of its regular diet. Picture that for a moment. There were animals in the world whose favorite prey was you. So how did we survive? How did a soft, slow, clawless animal live long enough to become the most dominant species this planet has ever seen? The answer is one of the greatest stories ever told, and almost nobody knows the whole of it. Let us start with the single most important weapon our ancestors ever held. It was not a spear, it was not a rock, it was fire. When our ancestors learned to control fire more than 1,000,000 years ago, everything changed. Almost every large predator on Earth is afraid of flames. A lion that would happily charge a lone human will stop dead at the edge of a burning campfire. So, at night, when we were most vulnerable, a ring of fire became a wall that teeth and claws would not cross. Our ancestors slept in the flickering orange glow, while the eyes in the darkness circled, hungry, and stayed away. But fire did more than frighten animals. It let us see in the dark, so an ambush was harder. It kept us warm, so we could live in colder lands where fewer predators followed. And the smoke and the smell of burning told every creature for miles that this patch of ground now belonged to the strange upright apes. Fire was our first great edge, and we have never let go of it since. Fire hid another secret too. Our ancestors learned that if they held the tip of a wooden spear in the flames, the wood grew dark and hard, so that a simple sharpened stick became a far deadlier point. And fire let us cook. A cooked meal gives up far more energy than a raw one, and it is easier to chew and to digest, which meant our ancestors could feed a hungry, growing brain. In a strange and roundabout way, the campfire helped build the very mind that would go on to outsmart every predator on the plains. The second edge was even stranger. It was the fact that we could throw. Watch almost any other animal and you will notice something. Almost none of them can throw an object hard and straight. Our shoulders, though, are built for it, unlike the shoulders of a chimpanzee. We can pick up a rock and hurl it with real speed and real aim. That may sound small, but think about what it means. It means a human could hurt an animal from a distance before those claws and fangs ever got close. A lone person throwing stones is annoying. 20 people throwing stones together is a storm of stone that can drive off almost anything alive. And that word, together, is the third and greatest edge of all. One human alone in the wild is fragile, but humans are almost never alone. We survived because we cooperated in a way no predator could match. A pride of lions works together, yes, but a band of humans could plan. They could talk. They could agree on a signal, split into groups, and set a trap that no single mind could have imagined. When a predator came, our ancestors did not scatter like antelope. They turned and faced it as one, shouting, waving branches, throwing stones, making themselves look like a single, huge, and dangerous creature. Very few animals will press an attack against a wall of noise and stone and fire. Now let us talk about the spear, because the spear may be the most important invention in the whole human story. The earliest spears we have found are wooden, and they are around 400,000 years old, carved and sharpened with enormous care. At first, they were thrusting weapons, held tight in the hands to stab a charging animal, or to keep it at arm's length. But then, our ancestors did something clever. They learned to throw the spear, turning it into a missile that could kill from a safe distance. And then, they made it even better. Somewhere around 20,000 years ago, or perhaps earlier, someone invented a tool called the spear thrower. It is a simple stick with a hook on the end, and it works like an extension of the arm. With it, a human could launch a spear far faster and far further than by hand alone, with enough force to punch through thick hide. Suddenly, a small, soft person could bring down an animal many times their own size, and never come within reach of its teeth. The prey had become the hunter. Then came the bow.
It's
The bow and
awesome!
arrow may be more than 60,000 years old, and it changed the game completely. A hunter could now strike silently, from behind cover, again and again, without ever being seen. An arrow could drop a deer, a boar, or a big cat before it even knew a human was near. With the bow, distance itself became our shield, and the animals that had once hunted us now had every reason to run. And some hunters made the arrow deadlier still. Deep in southern Africa, our ancestors learned to coat their arrow tips with poison, drawn from certain beetles and plants, so that even a shallow wound would slowly bring down an animal far too large to kill with the small arrow alone. The hunter only had to strike once, then follow the weakening creature for hours until it fell. A tiny, soft-bodied person could now defeat a giant, not with strength, but with patience and chemistry. There was another trick that used no weapon at all, and it belonged to our bodies. Human beings are among the finest long-distance runners in the whole animal kingdom. We sweat to stay cool while we move, but a furry animal has to stop and pant in the heat. So our ancestors would pick a single large animal and simply follow it, at a steady jog, hour after hour under the burning sun, never letting it rest. In time, the animal overheated and collapsed, and the hunters walked up and finished what their endurance had begun. We could not outrun an antelope over a short sprint, but over a whole day, we could run almost anything into the ground. But weapons were only half of the story. The other half was the mind, and this is the part people forget. Our ancestors were watchers. They studied the animals around them for their whole lives, learning where the lions rested in the heat of the day, which paths the bears walked, when the wolves grew bold, and when they kept away. They read tracks in the mud, they read broken branches, they read the alarm calls of birds that warned when a big cat was moving. A human who knows exactly where the danger is can simply choose not to be there. Knowledge, quietly, became a kind of armor. They used the land itself as a weapon, too. They pushed herds of huge animals toward cliffs and stampeded them over the edge, letting the fall do the killing. They dug pits and covered them with branches, so a heavy animal would crash through and be trapped. They used fire again, driving whole herds with walls of flame and smoke toward the hunters waiting beyond. None of this needed brute strength. All of it needed planning, memory, and the patience to wait. And when they could not fight, they hid and they built. A cave with a narrow mouth is a fortress, because only one animal can enter at a time, and a single person with a spear can hold that gap. Our ancestors piled stones and thorn branches across the entrances of their shelters, making barriers that claws could not easily cross. Some built their homes on ledges high on cliff faces, reachable only by ladders they could pull up behind them at night. Others learned that the safest thing of all was simply to move, to follow the food and stay ahead of the danger. Clothing mattered more than it might seem. Once our ancestors could sew warm hides together with bone needles, tens of thousands of years ago, they could survive in freezing lands that had once been closed to them. That opened up whole new territories, and in many of those cold northern places, the great predators were fewer and thinner on the ground. Sometimes the best way to escape a dangerous animal was to walk to a country where it could not follow. A needle and a warm coat, quietly, became a tool of survival as real as any spear. Do not forget the animal that chose to join us. Somewhere in the deep past, wolves began to linger at the edges of human camps, and slowly, over thousands of years, those wolves became dogs. It was one of the most important partnerships in all of history. A dog could hear a predator long before a human could, and would bark a warning in the dead of night. A dog could track wounded prey, corner a dangerous animal, and stand beside its human family and fight. In taming the wolf, we turned one of our old enemies into our fiercest guardian. There is one more thing, and it is the deepest of all. Our ancestors did not have to learn every lesson for themselves, because they could pass knowledge on. A hunter who discovered how to kill a cave lion without dying could teach that skill to his children, and they could teach it to theirs. Every generation started where the last one had finished. Stories, warnings, and hard-won tricks were handed down around the fire, night after night, for thousands of years. No single human is a match for a saber-tooth cat. But a human carrying 10,000 years of gathered wisdom is something no animal has ever faced. And so, piece by piece, the balance tipped. The fire, the thrown stone, the spear thrower, the bow, the trap, the wall, the dog, and above all, the shared and remembered mind. Not one of these alone would have saved us. Together, they made a soft and slow animal into the most dangerous hunter the world had ever seen. The animals that once stalked us in the dark began, one by one, to fear the smell of smoke and the sound of human voices. It is worth remembering what that struggle cost. For every clever ancestor who survived to have children, there were others who did not. who were caught at the edge of the firelight, or who never came home from the hunt. We are here because they were brave enough, and clever enough, and stubborn enough to keep going in a world that was trying very hard to eat them. Every one of us is the end of an unbroken chain of survivors that stretches back through the darkness for 100,000 years and more. So the next time you walk home at night without a second thought, with no fear of anything in the shadows, remember how strange that peace really is. It was not given to us. It was won, slowly, painfully, and brilliantly, by people with nothing but fire, stone, and each other. That, in the end, is how the weakest-looking animal on the plains became the one that all the others learned to fear.